So you've got a point of view, you've got a portfolio, you've got a process. Maybe you've won a commercial job, but are you going to be someone people like working with? My last video was about all the big skills: pitching, planning, producing, how to make real projects happen as a commercial filmmaker, or really any creative. Now it's time for some micro skills, the little skills that could make the same job be an absolute nightmare with one set of crew and a total breeze with another. I think of people who I've met throughout my life, people who are way more talented than me, more talent in a fingernail than I have in my whole body. They have a gift, but then their success doesn't match their talent. It might be that despite their talent, they're not somebody that people like working with. The last video was all about doing the work. This video is how you do the work. These tips all sort of hinge on having emotional intelligence, or at least wanting to improve your emotional intelligence, and sort of have the ability to hold a higher perspective while you work with a team. I'm going to speak specifically about a commercial film set because that's the collaborative environment that I'm used to working in. But hopefully you can apply this list I came up with to whatever work you do with your teams or your clients. And when I talk about these skills giving you a higher perspective, that's on purpose, because even though you might be a PA or a production assistant on the very bottom of a film set, that's okay. If you have any ambition, you can start thinking like a boss and seeing where your work fits into the bigger picture. And maybe that's the first micro skill, is that a lot of people at the bottom think they deserve better. There might be two ways that you can approach it. You think you can do better, so you do that job, that terrible job you're given so well that people want you on better jobs, or you can just sit and feel entitled and think you're better than that job, and then people won't want to work with you. And in some cases, I feel like sheer raw talent can be a hindrance, because you get places in life by simply putting in the work, by doing the reps. If things come easy to you, you may skip ahead a little bit, but then you're going to hit a wall and you're not going to have the resilience to get over it. When you walk on a commercial set, you're walking through a minefield. My goals as a director are different than the advertising agency's creative personal goals, which are different than the agency in general's goals, which are different than the client's goals. If you can figure out how to manage all of these different goals and expectations, there's a lot of success to be found. Sometimes you got to say, hold on, let's get the agreed to and storyboarded shot first, and then we'll try your stupid idea over there. Sometimes you have to compromise, but you have to be extremely tactful about how you do it. And then other times you're surprised. I'll have a seasoned executive producer and they'll come over and tap me on my shoulder and tell me something I'm missing and save the day. There's a really fine balance between preserving your vision as a director, but also opening yourself up to just enough input to make the day a success. But if you watch my previous video, you know that the shoot day itself isn't really for trying something new. It's for executing a plan. This leads to having grace. Compromise can sometimes let you wander away from the initial plan, and you can sort of lose sight of what your goals were. You start to lose your control of the set, and temperatures rise. Things can get out of hand. When things don't go exactly as planned, grace keeps you from shitting on the project, blaming people, letting things go off the rails. I think whining is a symptom of a lack of grace. And when things start going sideways, it can tempt you to bite the hand that feeds you, to blame other people, to complain, and won't be the best version of yourself. Like I've said to frustrated crew on set, it is a miracle that we are on set today. It's a miracle that anything is getting made. It's a miracle that I'm getting paid to point a camera at stuff. It's a miracle. I have the benefit of having worked in ad agencies, so I know that it could have been a year that it took for this creative idea to run through strategy, focus groups, approvals, client levels, all of this stuff to get to the shoot day. So when it's at the finish line, don't throw it all away. Have grace. When I was an agency art director, part of my job was picking directors to shoot the commercials that I had a part of writing. And it was always interesting to see how some of them would fall apart on a shoot day. They would get moody and pissy. And watching that, I decided that I never wanted to be one of those directors. I decided that there's got to be a better way to get to the end of a shoot day than to turn into a big whiny baby. You may feel like you're getting upset because you care, But you getting upset is proof that you don't care, that you're willing to throw a temper tantrum and burn the whole thing down. Focus that energy on solutions to get you to the end of the shoot day and then build a better plan for the next shoot day. It obviously didn't work. If someone's being a big baby, just tell yourself that this is the last time you got to work with that big baby. The filmmaking, photography, the creative business is all freelancers. The way you fire a freelancer is you just choose not to work with them again. You or I even simply just won't be chosen next time. Just remember to have grace. It's just work, and it's not even important work, it's advertising. From the start, you need to learn how to articulate your point of view, your vision, and not be offended if you don't get chosen. Don't get offended if it doesn't land with the client, if you don't get the job. You need to be comfortable with the idea that this job maybe just isn't for you. And you also need to think about the inverse. My idea just might not be for them. And that's because my idea is too good, right? They don't understand it. They don't get the level this noggin is working at. That's why they didn't choose me. I'm too much of a genius. What a bunch of morons. I'm just kidding. When you lose a job, you don't know if you lose it because your pitch sucked, because the client's nephew got a new camera that shoots open gate or something, or because the ad agency art director's buddy is already a shoo-in and you're just a filler bid and the client needs everything triple bidded. You don't know why you didn't get the job. If I lose a bid, and I lose a lot of bids, I think back on whether there were any glaring errors, and then I move on. I don't imagine errors that I possibly made. That's not healthy. I just move on, forget I ever pitched it, and just try to be better in the next one. You've got to start somewhere, but if you regularly think of yourself as a servant, if you grovel and beg and take jobs that aren't for you, that's going to warp how people see you. And you're going to become like surly, sassy, unhappy. You possibly might get stuck there. For my last video, I talked to great lengths about a portfolio and how it's just as much for you as it is for your clients. Say no to clients who are toxic. I've been on projects that went horribly, a nightmare. And then the client has come back to me asking for me to work with them again. And I realized everyone else said no to them. And then I proceed out of experience to say no to them. There's magic words that are sorry, I'm booked. Sorry, I'm booked is great because not only is it a very diplomatic way of saying no, but it also sort of creates the illusion that you're busy, which makes people want you more. Sorry, I'm booked. So if you watched my old video, again, I keep referring to the last video. What I love about being a commercial director is that you need one point of view. You can't say we could do it this way or this way or this way. You can't plan for 3 different shoots. You got to pick one. So as a director hired for one point of view, I also give myself permission to disagree once. Beyond disagreeing once, I have to really figure out in my mind whether it's worth blowing up a shoot because a client wants something drastically different than what we agreed to in the pre-production meeting. So it's a really tricky balance. On the other hand, if you spend the whole shoot disagreeing with every little choice, that's annoying as well. It comes down to the importance of pre-production. I feel like a lot of people just want to get through a pre-production meeting. It's the meeting where I'm often meeting the client themselves for the first time, and I get to look them in the eye and tell them my point of view, and I can very quickly read whether things are going to go sideways on the shoot or not. So I try to head that off, try to do so much work in the pre-production meeting before we get to set. Disagree once and move on. Give them little things to distract themselves with, little decisions that make them feel good about their involvement in the shoot day. But if things really start going sideways and they want to change everything, just look towards the end of the day that it's coming quickly at you and just decide that you never have to work with that person again. On a shoot day, things change a lot. Plans change. You see realities that you didn't really see on your tech scout, on your location scout. So things can change. So sometimes we set up a light here and then we have to move it over here. The best crew, they just make that change happen. They know things change and they roll with the punches. Defensive crew will say something like, "You told me to put it over here. Why'd you tell me to put it over here?" Which is on their part a lack of grace that leads to them being defensive. Sometimes things change and you just drop it. I know what I told you. Defensiveness is a personality trait that a lot of creatives have, and it goes both ways. A lot of directors, if you gave them a suggestion, they might get very upset because they're the boss, they're the dictator or whatever. But I think I've worked on myself to have a lot of grace and to lose defensiveness because it'll serve you better as a director. I'm on set not very often, but crew is on set day after day after day. The sum of the knowledge and experience of the crew on set is really great. And if you're an open director, if you're not a defensive person, you can learn so much. And as someone who didn't go to film school, my crew and my teams are my film school. I remember a shoot with a baby once, and the focus puller had a great idea for how to distract a baby, and it worked. I run into this defensiveness with editors a lot where they are really hesitant to really chop up their edit. You know, they've been sitting with it, they've fallen in love with it. And then I come in and I have a lot of suggestions and I want to rework it. And you can feel a lot of resistance to doing that. Duplicate that sequence and take an axe to it, and you might see your edit in a new way. Sometimes you need to chop up something you love to grow. You need to kill your darlings. Once we start chopping up that duplicated sequence, I bet you $1 bazillion we're never going back to the old one. The same with writing. When I write these stupid YouTube videos, I chop a good 25% out of them, maybe even 50% sometimes. Once it's gone, I never miss it. Because when I'm editing, I'm not a writer anymore. I'm an editor. That writer. We've got some chopping to do. Not being a defensive person, knowing that there's a goal and we're all a team, be open to the best idea, whether it's yours or not. And if we have to move, we have to change plans, it's okay to work. The job always gets done. If a job is going sideways, if there's going to be a crash landing, try to get to the finish line with as much grace and creative vision intact as possible. I've heard of directors storming off set. Don't do that. It's just advertising. You're not protecting your vision if the job doesn't get done. Like I said in portfolios, if the piece turns out like garbage, don't put it on your reel. An unfinished job, however good the stuff you got, if it doesn't add up to anything, it's not done. Unfinished jobs are an open loop in your brain. I picture it almost like a workbench that has all of the stuff from your last project on it. Clear that work table, close the loop, get the job shipped. If it's a freebie job that you promised to do, get it done, get it out of your brain. Get it done by this weekend. It's very rich coming from me, a person with a lot of open projects, but I'm getting better. Be generous. There is enough work to go around. The filmmaking and photography community in my city is small, and because of that, I know I'm constantly bidding against people that I know, people I consider friends. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. I don't read into it. I recommend competitive photographers when I'm too busy to take on a job. I hope they would do the same for me. Forget about that scarcity mindset. There is enough to go around. If there's one skill to rule them all, it's just be reliable. It's what I told my daughter when she was worried about whether she was smart enough. I told her all she needed to worry about was being reliable. In every aspect of life, and by extension your work, it's not enough to be smart or talented. You need to be reliable. You can make people ignore your talent by being a big jerk, or you can make people ignore that you're maybe not the most talented person in the room by just literally being there and being reliable. Reliability can make up for a lot. No one likes a flaky friend or a flaky crew member. Show up on time, show up 5 minutes early, maybe an hour early, and get yourself a nice coffee at the espresso bar around the corner. Do your part of the work, even the boring pre-production. Don't check out because it gets hard or it gets boring and force someone else to pick up your slack. Do you remember how it is on school group projects? Reliability means you meet deadlines. I worked with an executive producer for the first time, and I really miscalculated the time it was going to take me to do the editing on this project. I was directing, shooting, and editing it. It was a lot of work. I asked my producer if he could buy me a couple extra days to edit, and he said no. We don't ask for extensions. We meet deadlines. I'm so glad he did this because it taught me to plan better and to be more professional, to be more reliable. And also, don't flake out on bookings or commitments, especially because you found something better. even though you want to ditch my 1-day job for another's 2-day job, in the long run, you won't end up ahead. It's not worth making your client, making me, making a producer do extra work, especially because you found something that in your opinion is better than them. They simply won't choose you the next time. All of these things I'm telling you, no one told them to me as tips or tricks. They're things I learned from experience. Time plus experience is the real filmmaking hack. As you move from a person who just made a cool creative thing to someone who's a working professional, pay attention to successful people, how they behave. Pay attention to yourself, how you behave and what happens based on your behavior. Be open, be graceful, be honest with yourself, be honest with your clients. Clients and crew don't care what camera you're shooting on. They care about the final product. And then very quickly after that, they forget about that. And all they care about is how you made them feel. And there's one other note. As you're building a portfolio, remember that your client work is often not your true work. A lot of big Hollywood directors and cinematographers, they shoot a lot of commercials because they make a lot of money and they get to try a lot of things on those commercials, but it's not their true work. On a smaller scale, that corporate project you work on doesn't have to be your true work. I think a lot of the frustrations that come out on a commercial film set often stem from creatives who are unfulfilled elsewhere in their life, and they're looking for their creative fulfillment on that commercial shoot, which is a powder keg for emotions. It's honestly why I started this YouTube channel, so I could just not have a client. It's why I write. It's why I shoot creative projects. Client work, even if it's 100% of your income, shouldn't be relied on for creative fulfillment. Work on yourself, work on your true work, and client work might just be a nice perk along the way. Sounds like where I should plug some sort of like meditation course or retreat or something. I have nothing. I know what I can plug though. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter where I talk about all this junk, sign up for it. Also, as you may have noticed, I've never had a sponsor on this channel, so consider visiting my Patreon. At least join my Patreon as a free member or my newsletter, so when I have some cool things that'll be releasing around Christmas, the New Year, you can see what they are. All right, thanks for watching. Have a good night.